Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast. Presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Josh with the MitsuTimes podcast. Today my guest is Andre Geisler. He is the owner and driver of one of the sickest 3000 GTs on this planet. How are you doing today, Andre?
I'm very good, thank you. And you?
I'm great. I'm so glad that we get a chance to do this because I feel like I've been seeing your car everywhere over the years, and something about those side exhaust pipes just looks so good on that car.
Yeah. I did that primarily for weight reduction, but now we're down to just the one single side exit, which is 5-inch, which is rather nice.
Heck yeah! I bet it sounds great.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's pretty loud.
So why don't you tell us about the setup on the car?
Okay, the current setup, or the one that we're working with now, is quite different from how it was before. We went with a 4-litre stroker, custom stroker from Ray Pavina, in a 74 block. It's got 72 heads. It's got my custom cams up top. It's got some modified dynamic racing 72 heads with the custom valve job, not the usual oversize. Obviously a spring kit. It's I've got a couple of sets of those heads. I've got some that are pinned and some that are not, and I run the pyramid ring set up for head sealing with the A1 head studs. Clamps it. Since figuring the system out, it's never pushed coolant, not once.
Oh wow!
So I'm really happy with that top end. I had some custom exhaust and header work done in the UK by a company called Zero Exhaust. They did a really nice job. And we've mated that with a Precision 91mm Pro Mod Gen 2 turbo, and the capability for a 250 nitrous shot as well to help spool things up. My car's been through multiple builds over the years, and we did originally try to go auto with it. Unfortunately, the converter it just couldn't take the torque, and we pushed through it. We cooked everything in a brand new box, and so now we're in the midst of changing back to my dog box, which I've had for a number of years.
And it's certainly worked well for you, getting into the mid-9s. I mean, that's incredible.
It's never performed according to its capability. Some may say that's the driver mod. I always struggled getting it off the line, and I lost a bunch of time on that and the gear shifts. So that's what we're working on right now, is how to get it off the line and how to optimize the gear shifts.
Okay. I mean, it's crazy, Andre, because you seem to be really the only one still with the V6 in the platform, still really pushing it, and to be within the top 10 3000 GTs of all time. That is really amazing.
I think there's still work to do with the V6. I think there are some really nice builds coming through. The passion seems to be reignited. The mindset seems to have opened up a bit. Relocation and change in orientation of the motor is no longer a taboo. I think there's some really exciting times ahead for that V6.
Good.
And it is, in my opinion, a really good motor.
For sure. So, Andre, I'm just so curious as to what it was that drew you to the 3000 GT in the first place.
Originally, I saw a 3000 GT, and it was the UK 3000 GT. This has been hotly debated, but I know what I actually sat in. I went to the motor show in the UK at the launch, and it was 1990. I know it was 1990 because they were also demoing the Renault 5 Turbo, and I remember the registration plate at the time, so I know the year. And they had on show a normally aspirated 3000 GT, which didn't actually launch in the UK until a year later, but they had it at the motor show and I sat in it. And I looked at the stats and I wasn't particularly impressed by the numbers, especially when I went and sat in the NSX, which was also at the show, and absolutely loved that. But then years later, I was following one down the road, and it was the twin turbo with the active aero, and it caught my eye. And then I started looking at the body shape, and the body shape really started to excite me. And then I looked at the stats, 6-speed, saw the active aero, the all-wheel steering, all the bells and whistles, just really attracted me. A lovely-looking car, and it had power. And, 300 horsepower to me back then was a lot.
Yeah.
And when I went to look at one, and the guy let me drive it, it was like, wow, I've got to have this car.
That's great.
It was as simple as that.
So you bought it straight off the dealer floor then, huh?
No, I bought it used
from
a company director, and he imported the vehicle as an 18-month-old car. And I bought it from him. He'd had it for 6 years, sole owner in the UK. So I bought it at 7.5 years old.
Okay. So was there any modifications done to the car when you bought it, or was it just pretty much a stock car?
It was pretty much a stock car. He had an HKS blow-off valve on it. From factory, it was fitted with the NK optional wheels.
Okay.
And that was it.
Wow. So you had a very good starting point then.
Yeah, I did. I didn't have the best advice when I did get it. I was advised to take out one of these aftermarket warranties, which I quickly learned was not worth the paper it was written on. And so I left the car untouched for a full 2 years, because I was told it would void that aftermarket warranty. Well, there was no need in waiting, really, because it wasn't worth anything.
Wow. So, did you have any goals when you bought the car? Did you already know that you wanted to make it into a drag car, or did you just want to make it a little bit faster and drive it like that?
That's a really interesting question, because I had no goals for modification at all, and I was enjoying the car for what it was, how it looked, how it drove, the power it had. And I went to a little gathering about 15, 20 miles from home, and I met some of the other guys there. One of the guys, his car was it was the quickest in the UK at the time. It had run a 12.01 in the quarter. It was still a TD04 car. But what amazed me was people were struggling to get past the magic 500 horsepower. And so I started reading up on it, and I thought, this can't be that difficult. And so that's when my first goal was launched, get a car over 500 horsepower, and in doing so, I found out about dyno numbers aren't necessarily comparable between different dynos, right, and whatever. And the only true measure is terminal speed on a quarter mile for a given weight. So I went to this guy called Mark Sheed of MA Developments in the UK, who had built a 200 mile an hour Sierra Cosworth with a 2-litre, and it had been televised, and the guy had a really good reputation for tuning. And it took me 18 months of working on this guy to get him to work on my car. because he'd been taken a 3000 GT by somebody who had basically tied it together with bits of string. It was awful. Yeah, and so he said never again. But I finally convinced him to work on my car, and he said, look, go standalone. And he said, I do the Autronics ECU, I bring them into the country. It's a fantastic piece of kit. And so despite the UK mentality at the time, which was all piggybacks, I went with the standalone. I prefer to start with a blank sheet of paper and tell the car what I want it to do, rather than try and fool it and confuse it into doing something that it's not really doing. And so Mark gave me the car back with 470 horsepower, because the wastegates were blowing open at 1.4 bar, and we'd gone with 15 Gs. It was nothing crazy. And he said, see how you get on, get used to it, bring it back when you want a bit more. Oh, by the way, we'll need some extra cooling, and we'll need some better wastegates. So I drove it around a little while on the 470, and then took it back to him and said, yeah, okay, I'm ready for more. It was only 4 months or something. It wasn't very long. And so we then stuck it on the dyno, and the thing knocked out 535 horsepower and 620 foot-pounds of torque, which, in the UK, just obliterated everything that was TD04 at the time. And it was, I think it was January. And so I took it the following week to Santa Pod, and I immediately bashed out an 11.4 at 122, which is like destroyed everything. I'd never done a drag race in my life, so that was really where the bug bit me, I think.
That's awesome. And it's just been downhill from there, huh?
Yeah. It's just been a very expensive exercise ever since. And once I'd done the TD04 UK, I then started looking at the times that were being knocked out across the world, and I went through several TD04 builds. When I say builds, the motor was always stock, the transmission was always pretty much untouched, apart from maybe a bell housing brace. Mm-hmm. And I bought some DR650s, which I got to enjoy precisely for 48 hours. Because we tuned these things, and the car was pulling hard, and on day 2 the compressor nut came off on one of them. Yeah, so they were used. They weren't new, I should add. And after that, I think that's when I put my DR750s on. Which were new. We went to 10 of the best and banged out a 10-second quarter, which and that was a completely full weight car. Wow. With no modifications other than a fuel delivery and air delivery and a front mount intercooler. So that was quite satisfying. And after that, the only way was to go bigger, although I did put some billet 19Ts on it at one point with a stock 3-litre engine. And we had some good fun with that, albeit we were in a very much lightened car.
Oh, that's amazing. So it was the 750s that broke you into the 10s for the first time?
Yeah, that's right. These were the 750 first gen turbos. The 11 blade model. I believe they're a bit more potent now.
Do you recall what setup it was that broke you into the 9s for the first time? Your first 9-second pass?
Yeah, I'd bought the Matt Monet short block.
Okay.
The 3.54 Merkel stroker crank setup. I I had his what I termed as the DR 1400s. They were actually the billet 1300s, but just as a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, we joked about them being DR 1400s. So it was really that motor and turbo combination. I didn't have any meth, I didn't have any NOS or anything like that on there. But I think I ran a 983 at 153 or something on concrete.
Wow. So not even a prep surface.
Oh, that was street tires as well.
Wow. What a machine.
Yeah, it was a lot heavier then. I think we were round about 3,500 pounds at the time, because what I'd done, I'd had the bodywork extended all around. The wheel arches I had 3 inches wider on each corner, so that I could fit 315 tyres all round on 10.5-inch rims. And they did a really clever job. They tack welded some steel rods to the wheel arches and tapered them in front and back, and then overlaid with cardboard, cut out a sheet and tack welded that on. And then they took all the fenders off and they removed the old wings from behind. So it was like it came out of factory with that wide arch kit on it.
Yeah,
but it was all metal. The car was all metal.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm just going back and looking at your pictures of checking out the wheel arches, and it looks like it's from the factory, just like you said. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with what the body shop did with that. Obviously, since then they've been replicated in carbon Kevlar honeycomb, so it's a lot lighter.
Wow. How much does the car weigh now?
The last time we weighed it, it had the auto box in, which I believe is heavier than the dog box setup that we're putting in, and it weighed 1,170 kilograms, or just a touch over 2,500 pounds then.
Wow.
That's and amazing. We don't have any tube frame. We're not going tube frame. The reason that held me back from tube frame was the series I was competing in at the time. It would have moved me from street class into pro class, and I didn't want to do it.
Yeah. That's a good reason not to do it. So, Andre, like you were saying, it's become a very expensive endeavor over the years. Do you think, going back all those years, that you would still do it all over again?
I would do it all over again. I was fortunate with my business back when I started getting serious, that it wasn't so much of an issue to do it. I was quite financially fortunate, so I would do it all over again. However, I would do it differently.
Okay.
The reason I say I would do it differently is my car has often been termed as a compromise car since day one, because one of the things I've insisted upon is that it remains street legal throughout its life. Mm-hmm. I want to use this on the streets, and so it's never been a totally dedicated track car. I would still keep that street use as something I want, but I think I would have got more serious with the build and not have tried to keep as many creature comforts. For example, I really had to get caged to 8.5 seconds. I didn't like the idea of a door bar being down there. Right. I've subsequently had it recaged to a 7.5, which has a crossbar. I think, knowing now that I would end up there, I would have gone straight for the 7.5 cage, because it cost me a lot of money to go from an 8.5 to a 7.5. Okay. It cost me somewhere around about £11,000.
Wow. That is a lot of money.
Yeah. So other things, I think from what I'm learning about this single turbo setup, everything's pointing towards it being a route I would take now. If I could walk the same path, I would have taken a long time ago. because I just like the way the cars turned out. We're not constantly battling for space by the firewall and things like this, and cooling issues up front. I think it's a route I would have preferred to have gone initially.
Okay. Go single turbo sooner?
Yeah.
Okay.
But time will tell.
So, Andre, what is it that motivates you to keep pushing this car? When, like you said, it's still street legal and everything else, you could easily, buy another shell and make a dedicated race car, but you keep pushing this one. What is it about this car that keeps you going?
It's a very good question. I think it's just I feel there's unfinished business. There's just that, look, we can get this right. We can get its maximum potential. And to walk away from that would feel like I hadn't fulfilled the journey.
That makes sense. I mean,
it's crazy sense. It's crazy sense.
I mean, it is crazy, but it's the drag racing mentality. I mean, that's just it's what it is.
Yeah, I do enjoy the drag racing mentality. We've got a new track or two that are starting to come forward in the UK here. So Spitfire down in Devon is attracting my attention. Then we've got the Brighton Speed Trials. They could be a little bit of fun. I wish we had more tracks. I wish we had better prep. And there was some talk some time ago among a couple of the guys saying, you should bring it out here to National Gathering or MIR, import versus domestic or whatever. I said, yeah, but the shipping costs. And I said, well, let's get a GoFundMe going or something and we'll get your car out here. And that would be a lot of fun, but I don't know if that will ever happen.
And it's been a while since we've seen a 3000 GT at World Cup finals at MIR.
I'd love to put it in. I really would. If we get this set up right, I would love to bring it over. But it does come down. The cost would be significant.
Right. That's last year I went and they were talking about people coming from South Africa and all kinds of stuff. And that's the first thing that popped in my head was, wow, that must have cost so much money.
Yeah, well, we get people coming over to the UK from Malta. Justin Ladmu, he's got an old Ford Escort Mark II. I think he's got a rotary engine in it, and he comes over to the UK to race. And I sit there and I wonder about the cost, what it must cost them to do that.
Right.
But then, if you can make this whole thing a world competition, wow. What a competition that would be.
Right, for sure.
I think that would be really exciting, and surely it must appeal to vendors as well.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly see the big companies traveling all over and making sure everyone has the parts that they're looking for their platforms that maybe the rest of the world doesn't get. So. Yeah, I think there's certainly something to what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I watch some of the support that goes on, obviously, from a distance, and I'm just in awe of how supportive these guys are. We don't tend to get quite as much support in the UK because it's not such a big sport in the UK. The sponsors that I have been lucky enough to be supported by have always been extremely supportive and helpful wherever they can. But it's not the same as somebody turning up to the trackside with a new axle because he's broken an axle, for example, right. and you've got a race tomorrow.
Right.
It's not on the same level.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Exigent Solutions. Exigent Solutions provides custom tools, parts, and accessories for the motorsports industry. Based in Cincinnati, Ohio, their services include CNC machining, mechanical design, rapid prototyping, and engine assembly. They are best known for their record-setting 4B11 builds. They have the parts and expertise to get your car up our list. Check out all their products and services at exigent-solutions.com. Andre, do you have any goals for this year that you want to get accomplished with the car? Is it just the to get the manual swap and to get that working smooth?
Well, I do have some goals. They're not huge. Yes, it is to swap the manual in. We were originally going to put the synchro box in, and I was going to enjoy it for a year, but then decided to go with the dog box, which involved sourcing a strain gauge. We found out that the clutch was no longer good, so we've had to look at a custom clutch that will hold the torque, because with the 4-litre 74, first thing it wants to make is a bunch of torque, more than we've ever had. And so we're going to have to torque limit through the ECU, but likewise we need a better clutch setup, which has involved going bigger in diameter. I had previously gone smaller, but going bigger. New flywheel. The car had been stood for a while, so we've had some issues with having to replace injectors and the battery and things like that. Unbudgeted expenses. But once we've got this in, we're also going to look at some kind of launch assistant, and nitrous is new to me, so getting that in and getting that working. We'll probably look to temper the tune. I don't know, maybe 1300 horsepower, get used to it, optimize the launch, and when we're happy with that, we'll turn it up a bit. It would be nice to get below an 8.5 second. And I believe, everything's indicating that with the setup we've got, it's got the potential to go 7.5 or quicker, and 180, 190 in the quarter.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's got it all there. It's whether we can extract it. It's whether we can get the setup right. And ultimately, an ultimate goal of mine is to get it onto a pneumatic paddle shift from the dog box. We've got an H pattern to sequential converter on the dog box, so it would purely be a case of engaging with this company that I've identified to have some pneumatic shifters instead of cables and H-pattern to sequential. And it's all possible. It's all money. And the company at the moment aren't taking on new work. So it's about staying in touch and seeing if we can get that to come about. But yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would, especially pioneering, a whole new system for this car that maybe can propel others to even go faster. That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about finding new ways and sharing the knowledge and information. So, Andre, do you have a number in your head that is your ultimate quarter-mile goal?
I'm cautious when I answer this question because everyone has a dream and everyone has a realistic figure in mind. And my dream would be to go below 7.5 and to be in the 190s. That would be my dream. Whether we achieve it or not, we'll have to wait and see. I think this year we could certainly go somewhere between 8.5 and low 8s, so long as we do get the car back and set up during the season. Mm-hmm. Now that's a big if, because like I say, there's a lot of expense going on with this, and I've got a lot going on in my personal life that is slowing things down, right, because we're working for the future. It's not all about the car, it's about gearing ourselves up for the future. If we can get that bit sorted, then the car may well hit the tracks this summer, and I'm with a good shop right now. They do understand how to get these cars going well on track, so I have got fairly high hopes.
I was going to say, 8.5, that'll put you as the quickest 6-cylinder 3000 GT.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't. When you work out the power to weight, if we're weighing in about 2,500 pounds plus driver, and this car on pump gas at wastegate pressure without optimizing, because we overpowered the dyno with torque, it was making around about 1,000 horsepower at wastegate. So to get 1,200 out of it, it's not going to be that difficult.
Right.
It's really not. And if you put 1,200 horsepower through a 2,500 pound car, you're there. You're in that zone.
That stands to reason for sure.
And that's without the nitrous. The nitrous hopefully will help get us off the line, which was probably my biggest loss of time.
Gotcha. So you already talked about it a little bit, Andre, but I wanted to see if there are any other off-season upgrades besides the dog box and the slipper gauge, or is there anything else that you plan to add in the off-season to help you out this season?
No, not really. Like I said about the pneumatic paddle shaft, I think that's something for the future. We'll do a tune, find out where the car is happy and content without pushing it, but still making good numbers. There is a particular development that I will be working on. I've got this thing called a rattler instead of a damper on the nose of the crank.
Okay.
And some of the guys out there know that I do this thing, and I'm hopefully going to be putting a group buy together with an improved version. And the improved version is going to have a trigger wheel and timing marks on it, and we're working on a bracket for a Hall effect sensor to pick up on the trigger wheel.
Wow.
Plus we're going to have it pre-drilled for a dry sump pulley as well. So hopefully that's coming and fairly soon. But with the bigger torque, I was speaking with Steve at Vibration Free about this only a couple of days ago, actually, and I spoke to him again yesterday. When you get to the bigger torque numbers, there's a further improvement that you can make on a product that's exclusive to them, which is you have a rattler. Are you familiar with the rattler, by the way?
I've heard of them before. I'm not familiar with how they work now.
Okay, well, the rattler is a series of counterbalance weights built in to the pulley. And what they do is they counteract torsional vibration rather than damping it. Oh, okay. So these weights move within a pocket. And the minute that a vibration occurs, the weights will move to exactly neutralize that vibration.
Wow.
They'll move to a balance point, and it's a pretty dynamic. It's going the whole time, but you hear a click when you first start it, if you haven't got too loud a motor, but then you don't hear the thing again.
Huh.
Now, when you get to a certain level of torque, damping or neutralizing one end of the crank, it reaches a limit. Right. So what I'm looking at with Steve is putting a rattler in the flywheel as well.
Oh, okay.
So you're actually be neutralizing both ends of the crank. We're lucky because we've got a fairly short and stout crank, and some of these straight sixes, they need it more. But with the levels of torque that we produce, we knock the straight sixes out of the ballpark. So that's when it becomes a problem for us. So Steve has been talking to me about maybe getting one of these rattler flywheels made for the platform. So that's a potential development in the future.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So Andre, I wanted you've had years and years of experience with this platform. I wanted to get your insight for anyone who's looking to either build their car or someone who's in the process of building their 3000 GT, what advice would you give them from all the things that you've learned over the years to help them out on their build?
I would say the biggest piece of advice is be clear in your mind where you want to end up. Because I wasted a lot of money doing compromise builds. Dream big. Don't have too many fixed ideas. Be willing to compromise. The only fixed idea I would retain now, compared with at the beginning, is that I want to use it on the street. Everything else I was quite resistant to. I would also say, look at people carefully and the path they've trodden. Talk to people, get information, and learn from their experiences. I walked a path that was not well trodden. There's a wealth of experience out there now. Tap into it.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, you're in a path right now that very, very few have set foot in. So,
yeah, I like to think, if I can, I like to think outside the box. I like to think of different solutions, and I'm one of the guys that likes to figure out a problem. It comes with great expense, but it's fun, and it's very rewarding too.
Right. So is there any events that, like you said, all the stars align and the car gets together in time before the end of the season? Is there any events or maybe one event that you're shooting for this year to make it to?
If I could get it together in time for an event called 10 of the Best in the UK, I would be very happy about that.
Okay.
It's run in Elvington Aerodrome, which is above York in Yorkshire. It's the same one that's run on concrete, and it's run over an entire weekend where they have a little gymkhana or handling track. They have a quarter-mile run, and they have a flying kilometre as well.
Huh.
Yeah, so that could be quite fun because you do get some good times on the drags. And with the auto, I was never going to be able to compete for the flying kilometre because I would have had to have revved too high to achieve the speed that I think is capable with this car. Whereas with the dog box, no, there's plenty of room in the gearing not to rev too high and certainly get above 200.
Well, good. Hopefully you can get it all together and get it out there, and that'd be a great way to break back in, especially that new 4-liter you put together.
Yeah, it's the last weekend in July, so it may be possible.
So, Andre, what social medias can people either keep track of your build or check it out more and maybe reach out to you and ask some questions?
I'm not the best at marketing, shall we say. I do have a YouTube channel, which is purely my name. It's not regularly updated, but there is some stuff on there. Again, I'm on Facebook. I'm a member of quite a few of the 3000 GT groups on there. I think I'm a member of the 4A33, the auto group, and a couple of others, Drag Racers UK and things like this. So I'm on various groups on Facebook, and if I get a friend's request, I normally just look at the profile, and if it's a car guy, yeah, I'll add them, and that way they can chat to me. They can have a look around and see if there's anything going on with my car. That's probably the best way. And I like to think that I'm approachable. I don't often not talk to people. If they approach me, if they message me, then yeah, I'll have a chat.
There you go. Nothing like picking the brain of someone who's been doing it for a long time. That's the way to just like you were saying in your advice, that's the way to get your car up there.
Yeah, and I don't keep secrets.
There you go. All right, finally, Andre, I always give people a chance to give a thank you or a shout out to anyone who's helped them out along the way. Is there anybody that you want to give a thank you to?
Yeah, I'd like to give a thank you to companies that have helped me with pricing. They've helped me with support and advice along the way. I'd like to thank Fuel Lab, who have been excellent throughout, as have Precision Turbo and Engine. Some of the smaller companies that have helped me along the journey really deserve a big thank you too, such as Chris from Arvenge Performance, and the brake man helping me lose some weight out of the car, and suspension company Tin, who helped me revalve and respring their shock absorbers to what I actually needed, not what you could necessarily buy off the shelf.
Awesome.
Wizards of NOS have helped me to start my journey of using nitrous to help spool a bigger turbo, so thank you to them. Magnus Motorsports, hopefully helping me get off the line a bit better, have offered me some financial support as well. And finally, on to the guys that made it happen. I'd like to say a big thank you to Brent at SMD, who have now become engine tuner at Brighton. The build quality is something you've really got to see in person to believe. It is exceptional. And the whole thing is brought together by a guy who's now my friend and is the only guy who's ever tuned my car, a guy called Mark Sheed from MA Developments. So thank you.
All right, Andre, thank you so much for coming on here. I'm glad that people get to hear your story and to be able to follow your build more. I think your car is interesting because you're not only one of the only ones, if not the only one right now, pushing the 6-cylinder in a 3000 GT, but also it's a different looking car compared to the other drag 3000 GTs you see, and it looks so cool.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I hope to see an update from you soon.
Yeah, good. And stay safe. Thank you.
You as well.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.